Yeah. Ready for a little Wednesday Q&A here for you. Oh, man. What a week it's been. I think, boy, have I been releasing an episode like every day for the past few days? It seems like I've been getting a lot of content out there. But I haven't heard any complaints. So, hey, great. If I can add on to it, wonderful. Boy, yesterday, talk about a lot of fun I had. Stephanie and I, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, we actually were on School Sucks, and we did a little bit of a special Star Wars episode. Boy, if you didn't listen to that, it's only about an hour long, but I thought it was such a great discussion. So many very interesting things brought up, not just about Star Wars, but really about cinematography overall. And I mean, just lots of stuff like that. It was so much fun. If you hadn't listened to that episode, that's one I definitely recommend you get in on. Because like I said, I know I've been putting out a lot of content as late, but I want to make sure, we've got some new patrons this week, and I want to make sure that they are seeing, hey, when you start doing that, at least $1 a month, and some people do more, that when you put that out there, you're getting your hands on a lot of content, and I hope you consider it quality content. And so far, I think it's true. In fact, a lot of people, they've been really loving the top 8s. I've been very excited about that. I'm glad you have. Recently, we started our comic book top 8s, which that's one that could go on probably forever. Hell, I could do a comic book podcast, a podcast about comic books overall if I really wanted. But I have other podcast ideas in mind. Some of them are for Sovereign Tech patrons. Some of them are entirely new podcasts that certainly will take nothing away from my baby, and my baby being Sovereign Tech. And of course, all the Sovereign Tech listeners, I love you. So anyway, why don't we get into, we've got some great, do listen to that Star Wars episode. Got some great questions to get into. I'll try to get to all of them. Some of them kind of have stories attached, and so I want to be able to touch on those. So I noticed the damnedest thing, and this is so funny. So, all right, you're going to get a little bit of an inside track here from the Golden Stallion. And that is that, I do have, much to my chagrin, I do have a Facebook account. And I don't want one. I would just as well delete it. There are varying reasons why I do have one. I don't want to say have to have one, but why, out of certain considerations, I have one. Okay. I'll just put it that way. Now, here's the funny thing, okay, with having it with the Facebook account is that I was like, okay, but how can I really decrease, using a lot of Facebook's kind of extraneous apps and, all these different things. And it's so funny. Just a couple days ago, I was like, you know what? And this is true. Part of what I'm about to say is absolutely true, but then a funny thing kind of happened today. As I'm recording this. So I was like, okay, groups are really where it's at. And it is so true. Trust me, if you're wondering, and this was, for a couple of years, one of the things that I was really saying is why are people so obsessed with using Facebook? What the fuck's the deal? Part of the reason that I said that was, or the main reason I said it was, is because, people want to fuck their neighbor. Or whoever, or their high school crush maybe, or something like that. They want to go back and they want to stoop, such and such person, right? That's why, that's the real appeal here is that they get to, act like a rock star on Facebook when in real life they might not be so much, which whatever, you can be what you want, and do what you want, of course. But, when you're on Facebook, yeah. So anyway, so you get to show the best part of your life, and maybe that could somehow attract somebody into your life. That's that's what I've always felt was the appeal to Facebook. Now, I still think that's true, but as far as why do people have Facebook, especially when one of the things that I kind of noticed on Facebook is that a lot of people that have Facebook don't really post anything, and they don't even really interact. You never see them interacting on timelines or anything. So what do they do? Are they just using Messenger? Which that's certainly a viable thing because, Messenger is very much, in some ways has replaced the phone number. It really has. It's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And this is one of the small advantages I get to actually having a Facebook account is that as a tech journalist, which I am, I get to, I get to report on what exactly is going down, and like what are the changes, and I get to see what that looks like for Facebook, and I get to come to realizations similar to the ones, that I came to recently, and that is that really what's really happening with Facebook isn't happening on the timeline. I doubt it's even really happening in Messenger, though maybe it's happening to some degree in Messenger. Where it's really happening is in Facebook groups. Groups is where all the action is, okay? And there's secret groups, those hidden groups and everything you don't know that are there, where all kinds of wild shit's going down. And I mean wild shit, okay? Or people are, and I've talked about this before in previous Q&As as well as on Sovereign Tech Proper, or Sovereign Tech Prime episodes, in that, a lot of people, especially like in the anarchist and liberty movement, and so I'm sure it's happening all over the place elsewhere. You have a lot of these little groups that are, working. They're kind of scheming in their little hidden groups, their little secret groups. Not that I have not that there's anything unethical about them doing that, but they're busy making each other seem like a bigger deal than they are, and they're giving each other all these big likes and, whatever else they're doing, like giving each other, I don't know, just cross-promoting or cross-working with each other and everything, and making them seem like there's some kind of a big deal in the liberty movement, when really they're just idiots, that happen to be slightly clever, or are willing to take advantage of some of these, again, not unethical, but I think that they're kind of shady tactics. So anyway, not that that's anything new. So yeah, groups is where all this stuff is happening, and some of some of these groups I wholeheartedly support. I'm aware of some where I'm just like, do that. Hell yes. This is great. I mean, in some places, people are getting freaky. and right on. And it's funny too, the reason that I didn't necessarily come to these realizations is because I never get invited to these groups. I find out about them more or less secondhand. Nobody invites me to any of these, fun clubs, even the open ones. I never get invited to these things. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I call bullshit on everything, but for whatever reason, I don't get invited to these groups. Anyway, so I had an idea in the past couple weeks. And that idea is that, admittedly, there's a few people I would like to converse with, on Facebook, and there isn't really like that great service somewhere where I can just kind of get everybody together and, it's really cross-platform, blah, 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 blah. I could do IRC chat rooms, but some of the people I'd want to converse with, perhaps that'd be a little above board for them, or, not above board. That'd be a little above what they'd want to, invest in and, to get something done, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to I'll make a little, a little closed group or something where I can talk about, the things that are actually a really big deal to me. I can talk about science fiction. I can talk about heavy metal. I could talk about, all the nerdity. I could talk about, comic books, Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon 5, Stargate, SG-1, Farscape, Blade Runner, whatever the fuck I want to talk about, I could talk about, which, by the way, that Blade Runner trailer, I'm on. I'm up for this. As much as I hate Ryan Gosling, I am up for this. And so I made one, just to see, okay, what's this all about? And kind of my thinking was, it's like, all right, so if I just use groups, what I could do is, and I don't really mess with Facebook proper, or the Facebook, the news feed or anything. If I could just go to groups, like I could install the Facebook Groups app on my test device, then I could uninstall the Facebook app, because then, because the Facebook app on Android devices, like, drains the battery. It's terrible. And it's been a known problem for years that the Facebook app just slashes batteries on Android devices. And so, I was like, all right, well, I can put groups on, then I'll be good, and I won't actually need the Facebook app. And if I need to, I can just, log into the mobile site of Facebook on, on Firefox, on Android. And so I do that, and it was actually working really well. I was like, wow, this is good. I don't have to use the Facebook app, and I don't have to deal with the fucking noise, on Facebook and all that. I like this. I could get behind this. But then what happens is Facebook releases some new goddamn feature where, and I swear to Satan, it looks like fucking kindergarten. What it allows you to do, and this only works with the app, at least at this time. Maybe it'll come out on the web. And this is sort of how Facebook, this is their insidious MO. I mean, where at first, they introduce new features on the app, kind of like, the different like faces that you can choose from, right? Where there's, angry, surprised, sad, blah, blah. Or, the different emotions, not emojis necessarily, but emotions. First they implemented that onto the mobile app. In that way, because they probably know, and they've got to be having this problem, that people don't, especially on Android, don't want to install the Facebook app because it is such a goddamn problem. And to say nothing on the amount of space it takes. I mean, it builds up to a few gig easily. And if you're using a 16 gig phone, Facebook can kill your storage in a heartbeat. And the other reason I say that I think I know that they don't that they have a problem with people not having the Facebook app on their phone is because how hard were they pushing to get people to install Messenger? That's the other one where they're having an issue because everybody was just using, as soon as they removed the Messenger, the private Messenger from the app, from the main Facebook app on Android, people instantly ran to the mobile site to where they wouldn't have to install Messenger because why? Well, obvious. You install Messenger, look at the goddamn permissions that thing asks for. It literally asks for the permission to make a phone call for you. It's bad. But of course, everybody wants to install it on their phone. Whatever. I mean, that's fine if you do. Just understand, fuck your privacy, if you want to do that, right? So anyway, Facebook has that problem where people are not installing their app. So I think that this is kind of an insidious trick on their part that they always release these new features, and to get everybody on board first, hot and heavy, they put it into the app because I'll tell you, to test out this new feature that I'm about to describe, like I said, looked like kindergarten. I installed the app again to test it, and what this does is that now recently Facebook has, and they just recently made this available on the on the website, on the big website. As to where before, this was also a feature that was just on the app, that if you type under, I'm not sure what the character count is, but it's kind of like Twitter. If you type under 100, I don't know, maybe 100 characters, then Facebook will make the font significantly larger, okay? And this became very popular very quickly. In fact, there was a very noticeable change statistically that people were writing less just so that they could get that bigger font, that pop, when they post something on Facebook. Okay. So now what they have is that when you're typing something out, and I don't know exactly yet because I'm just testing this out now, I don't know what the limits are to how much you can write out and lose this color bar, but it'll like these, when you start typing, a little like color bar, a color menu will show up at the bottom, and you can choose from like 9 or 10, preset colors that can be the background for what you're typing out, for your post, and then the post will be in white text, instead of the white on, black text on white background, it'll be white text on a whatever color you choose background. And it kind of, it looks like sort of those inspirational posters, but I mean, the colors, like the way that they're doing it, it's kind of a phased color. I mean, it looks like somebody took Crayola crayons to some degree, and it just, like, I felt, I'm looking at Facebook, it's like, what is this, is this first grade? How bad are people's attention spans if this is what you have to do to get fucking, eyeballs on what you're fucking saying? Oh, drove me nuts. I mean, I did like 3 of them. I tested it out. I mean, and it definitely catches eyes. Obviously, especially right now because it's new. Eventually, it's going to get old. But it's fascinating that, I mean, Facebook, I reported earlier in 2016, which, by the way, is this going to be the last Q&A of 2016? Well, not that we've been doing them that long, but, anyway. I reported earlier in this year, in 2016, that, that Facebook had said, there was kind of a leaked document saying that they were having a problem with what was called content collapse, to where people weren't posting anything, weren't posting things other than like news stories or memes or something on their timeline or on their newsfeed, right, in the newsfeed. And so they had a real issue with this. So it's interesting that suddenly you have two motions, or two new features, like the expanded, or the enlarged font feature for Facebook, and then you also now you have this new colored background, for any goddamn thing you post. That clearly is to try and get people to start, to solve this problem of content collapse where people weren't posting anymore. This was supposed to get people, maybe back into posting and maybe get people out of the groups, even though I can't see why this wouldn't work in groups. Just very, very well. So here's the thing, and this could actually lead into, in fact, I did get a question from a great listener asking me to talk about, do I think that Facebook could get taken over, could get overrun, let's say, by, just like Facebook kind of took over MySpace, right? Like MySpace was the big shit, and, you never could have imagined anything bigger than MySpace, and then Facebook came around and took it over. And the question was, and I don't want to spend time on it now. It'd actually be a great time to do it, but, I want to come to the stage about that with a lot more information, but the question is that can something overtake Facebook? Well, I think that introducing some of these new features, on Facebook's part, is them kind of quietly admitting that they have a problem. In fact, a lot of people, and Twitter's certainly not the one that's going to beat them. I mean, they're not. Twitter has so many business problems. I don't see it happening. And kind of the average person really doesn't give a shit about Twitter. Okay. Like they can't handle it. Their brains just can't do it. As hard as Twitter tries to make it a little more palatable, shall we say, to the normies. By having algorithmic feeds and all this different shit, which is the reason people use Twitter, is because they don't want that. So, this is a huge subject, okay? Because it's funny that Twitter doesn't take over, and I will talk a little bit about, can something overtake Facebook? But I just want to address this: is if you want to know how fucking sick the economy is, how fucking sick Silicon Valley is, and how skewed their business perceptions are. Twitter has how many hundreds of millions of users, but it's considered a failure because it only has a few 100 million users. Like that just shows how fucked up expectations and business models are today. Are you kidding me? Why? Because Facebook has over 1 billion, that's a success, and anything that has anything less is a failure? That's crazy. I mean, this is what Twitter needs to do. Twitter just needs to monetize. Okay, figure out how to monetize its very loyal few 100 million user base, and then it's fine. There's no reason that Twitter should be seen as a failure. They have a lot of business problems, but that's because the business has to somehow justify its fucking existence when it only has, 600, 700 million, however many 100 million users? Holy fuck, that's insane. Do you see how screwed up that is? Like, that should be seen as a wild success, and people should be working on, okay, how can we perhaps monetize this, this user base, and, how can we appease this user base? How can we, maybe get some more engagement, whatever. Okay. But that's not what they're thinking. All they're thinking is fucking growth. We got to get over 1 billion. We got to be bigger than Facebook. Otherwise, all of our investors are going to fucking walk away. Man, drives me nuts. I mean, anything else. And look, I can't believe it takes that much to power what Facebook does, okay? It's not like they need, now, they're adding in video, they're adding in all these other features, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so yeah, once you add in video, suddenly, all right, yeah, we need some serious server work. But for the large part, what Twitter mainly is, and what most people use Twitter for, you don't need a whole lot of horsepower in comparison to other companies, okay, to run a service like that. So it's not even, I can't imagine it's even that expensive to run. But what the fuck? Like, Yeah, I get it. There's genuine problems with Twitter. There's problems of abuse. I've talked about those things. I've said they were problems, and I've talked about it for years, well ahead of time of when the rest of, the fucking press got on board with it, okay? I know that there's problems, but really, this thing shouldn't be a failure. This shouldn't be seen as a failure. It's not a failure. Same thing, honestly, it was true for Google+. Google+ had, 500 million users at one point? Even if I'm off by my numbers, if you have over 1 million users, that should be seen as amazing. That should be seen as, oh, well, let's cater. That's 1 million people that you can make $1 a piece off of, a month, a day. There should be plenty of money to keep a service alive. This is how fucked up things are. This is how crazy things are in this economy. And what makes it worse is that a lot of people who, like to say, oh yeah, I'm an ANCAP, I'm a capitalist, I'm free market, baby. They are seeing these, those same people will say, oh no, Twitter's a failure. Or they're the same people that would say, oh yeah, no, whoa, we got to have 6 billion people, using our service or it's all bullshit. Man, you don't know shit about markets. You don't know shit about real business. You don't know shit about business that lasts. And so, yeah, please get rid of government. Hand the markets over to these dipshits. Well, fortunately, the market will speak and they'll fail, but then they'll probably cry and, who knows what the fuck they'll do. Oh, man. Anyway, so, point being, could something overtake Facebook? Could something get 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion users, whatever, to make it really, to see that engagement? Because let's be clear here, like the concept of besting Facebook at its own game does not come down to the amount of money it makes. Just doesn't. I mean, you could say, yeah, Facebook's the only true unicorn, blah, blah, blah. People have made, 12,000 fold on whatever their investments, the angels and all that shit, right? Okay, I understand that. All right, but really, the besting of Facebook comes down to having more users. Is that possible? Yes. Yes, I think that's absolutely possible. The problem is that even if a service did that, I think people, the tech industry, which is largely bought out by most of the tech companies, or the tech industry, I shouldn't say the tech industry, the tech reporters, okay, the tech journalists are mostly bought out by the tech industry itself, by the tech companies themselves, that they would rip to shreds anything that would come up. I mean, and if you don't believe me, look, something that would really help, okay, would say Wired maybe could run a story on, on some really interesting, maybe privacy focused, privacy centric, anonymity centric or something like that, social media site, right? Maybe Wired could run a story on that, because Wired is about, talking about what's hot, what's happening. And, they've published some good stories here and there as far as the crypto economy goes. But are they going to do that? No. Why? Just look at the fucking story that Wired or Fast Company, any one of them, just look at them. Who did that story of Zuckerberg, where the picture of Zuckerberg, he looked like fucking Constantine the Great. Like they were trying to immortalize his fucking visage on his fucking webpage. Maybe that was Fast Company. Regardless, the only reason Zuck should get a picture like that is if he's paying these people fucking off. That is insulting to have somebody, do that. And, fuck, if I was a Christian, if I was a Catholic or Orthodox or something, I'd be livid. What are you doing comparing this guy to Constantine the Great? Even though I know in Catholicism he's not seen that highly Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox he is. I get all that, okay? I'm the Golden Stallion. I know. Believe me, I wish I didn't know so much about religion. Anyway, so yeah, I think, yes, it's entirely possible that a company could get more users than Facebook has, could overtake Facebook. And honestly, Facebook is in some real trouble. And of course, that's why they diversified. That's why they have Instagram, which is also getting a shit ton of features added into it. And I would argue Instagram is in many ways, the superior social media platform out of them all. Okay, so in the future, yeah, honestly, Instagram, could effectively become the largest, social media platform in the world. That's the one that could overtake Facebook, right? I mean, something else could come out, that's a little more, entrenched, perhaps, in the crypto economy, with anonymity and privacy and all that. I could see that happening in the future, and I hope it does. But there is a huge uphill battle. Make no mistake. There's a huge uphill battle in the fact that any company that is trying to unseat Facebook or really any of the tech giants is going to have to take on tech journalism. They're going to have to take on TechCrunch. They're going to have to take on Wired. They're going to have to take on Fast Company because they, I guarantee you, are all in cahoots. They are bed buddies with Zuck, Page, Cook, all of them. Because it's remoras to sharks. They feed off of each other. They feed and clean. So, anyway, yeah, it could happen, but yeah. So, I mean, I guess what brought that whole subject up, and I have whole questions to get into. What brought that whole subject up was that all these new features is kind of a sign of decay. For at least in Facebook's case, I think it's a sign of decay. Not with all of them. I mean, if it's something that never really had a lot of features in the first place, then yeah, they get new features, and they try to, or they're trying to, you can see where they're trying to take on a competitor. Snapchat. Now, okay, so I should have mentioned that. There's the one, this is kind of the new darling, is Snapchat. Snapchat may be the social media platform that could actually wipe them all out. I will never get a Snapchat account. I'm going to make sure of that fucking shit right now. I've promised it before, and I'm going to stick to it. There's no way that Sovereign Tech's success relies upon Snapchat. Just no way. So I don't care. I mean, not that that's the only reason I use social media, but why add on another fucking account? So yeah, Snapchat, Instagram, of course, Instagram is taking on Snapchat, and so it's copying its features. That's really the whole story there when that gets new features. But as far as Facebook getting new features, which it's getting a lot now, but it's already such a convoluted mess, you need to start taking away shit. You really need to start simplifying stuff, which, I mean, they have to some degree. They got rid of the email addresses, right? They got rid of some of the other things. I mean, Facebook knows it has too much built into it, I guess. But yeah, all of that is, in my opinion, a sign of decay for Facebook. So keep your eye out. Snapchat's probably going to be the next one. Instagram is certainly, I think, in this game to last. So there you go. There's a bit of an assessment. That kind of gets into the question the person asked, but I'm going to go into more depth with it during tech history. And I want to kind of keep an eye on some things and talk about it. I think it'll be a great subject to bring up to see what happens with Twitter, who ends up buying that out. It'll be a great side story to get into that. But I think I might have kind of answered that question for the person anyway. So let me know your thoughts. Of course, if anytime any of you, any of the patrons, you guys, if you have guys and gals, if you have, and I love that, my audience, not just on Patreon, but as far as I can tell, by what metrics I am able to collect, I have a near 50-50 audience as far as men and women, and well, there's Z's, and I'm not sure about that, but that's not under my control to gauge that kind of metric. So anyway, great to have that 50-50. Thank you. But yes, please message me, use the private messenger on Patreon, get me on Twitter, hit the email, whatever, and let me know what you think. And believe me, I'll talk about it. I'll cover the responses. I have plans. I actually have quite a few responses to things that I plan on getting to in future Q&As. Anyway, all right, let's get into a bit of a tech question here. This is a good one. So, and this has to do with self-driving cars. The person was interested in my thoughts on this and brought it to my attention. So, I mean, it's definitely something that could be brought up in a Sovereign Tech Prime show. But I'll bring it up here. I'll bring it up here. This is interesting, and this is a link from safecar.gov. I didn't even know there was a website. But okay, safecar.gov, and it's the. Let's see here. Well, this obviously goes through various DOTs. Yeah, U.S. Department of Transportation, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And they have an entire page about V2V, like B2B, business to business, where, it's the letter B, number 2, and then B. This is V2V. Okay, Victor to Victor. So vehicle-to-vehicle communications. NHTSA, that's funny, is committed to improving safety and mobility on our nation's roadways. As we look ahead to the next stage of roadway safety in America, vehicle-to-vehicle, or V2V, communication technology shows great promise in transforming the way Americans travel. Using V2V technology, vehicles ranging from cars to trucks and buses to trains could one day be able to communicate important safety and mobility information to one another that can help save lives, prevent injuries, ease traffic congestion, and improve the environment. Now, what is the importance of this? Why bring this up? And of course, actually one of the latest bits here is from December 13th, 2016. I can put this link in the show notes, but if you're a Sovereign Tech patron, if you actually click the community tab, at Patreon, which is, you just type in sovereigntech.com, that takes you right to the Patreon, of course. You know that. You're a patron already. If you go to the community page, you can see where this story was shared with me. It's a great way to share stories with me. And, I'll tell you, for the future, let me know if you want me to talk about it in the Sovereign Tech Prime show, in a main show, or if you want me to talk about it as a Q&A, just so I know where you're looking to kind of hear it. But I'm going to talk about this one here, and definitely we'll be keeping an eye on V2V technology. So this is very recent, and kind of the gist, and the person that shared it with me, made the mention, is that eventually this car-to-car communication, this V2V technology, could be legislated, could be required as part of every single car. Now, I looked through some of the PDFs and everything that's listed here, and they're kind of describing how all of this can work, and really, I'll tell you, it looked just like the way that again, the honest engineers that are working on self-driving cars, it's the same thing. To where, for this to work, for this V2V to work, it's going to have to be in every fucking car. That instantly becomes problematic to me. I think that's crazy. Because, So let's just, this is right on the page, safecar.gov. Okay, it says right here. Let me read this sentence to you again, because again, there's some pretty big on this webpage. Yeah, there's quite a bit of blank space in between the lines here, quite a bit of white in between the lines. So what's in that white? Let the golden stallion look here for you. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so using V2V technology, vehicles ranging from cars to trucks and buses to trains could one day be able to communicate important safety and mobility information to one another that can help, here we go, here's where it's important, that can help save lives, prevent injuries, ease traffic congestion, and improve the environment. Okay, now that communication, how exactly is it going to save lives and prevent injuries? Is it going to automatically stop your car, perhaps? Is that what I see in between the lines? I think so. Yeah. Ease traffic congestion? Is that going to perhaps control what lane you're in? What exactly does this mean? What is this going to entail? How does it do this? Is it just going to give you some kind of warning that you completely ignore? Kind of like, the annoying dinging of, say, if you don't wear your seatbelt in modern cars, that annoys the fuck out of me. Because in New Hampshire, you don't have to wear your seatbelt. So, yeah, this is another case where, look, a lot of these new car technologies that everybody's talking about, the way for them to work is that every single car has to have them. And again, what are the implications of that? What is the implications of V2V technology? Okay, cars are going to start talking to each other, and what are they going, what's going to be the deal? Or here's the beauty. Here's I think this is kind of an obvious one, a little bit dystopian, I grant you, but here's an obvious one, and that is that, well, let's say there's a high-speed chase, and the police are going after the car. And what's going to, how are we going to find, where did this guy turn off to? But, the V2V, communication, well, we've got his registration, got his license plate number, or, you won't even need license plates anymore. All of it will be V2V. And you'll find instantly, because the cops will be able to send a signal, right? Just kind of like how IoT works. It'll be, its own little mesh network, or, maybe it'll work on, to some degree, some sort of, satellite OTA. Where it will communicate with all the cars in an entire city, and they'll know fucking exactly where you turned off, no matter how you tried to get away. ooh, this is going to be, what's going to happen? You're going to have new stealth technologies that, that turn off all V2V communications? Yeah, because this is a dystopian technology. Because you don't have the choice of not having it. And when you have governments, this is a technology that can be used against you. So no, it's not okay. But everybody loves their goddamn new cars. They love their computers in their cars. Not the Golden Stallion. I don't. Everybody wants their self-driving cars. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is like, you'd think this would be a base requirement for self-driving cars. Like, it just makes sense for, for them to use this and for, so that it can actually work. I mean, like, what happened? What was it, the Uber or the... Yeah, I think it was a Tesla car that I think was driving as an Uber. And of all ironies, I was going to talk about this. I was going to talk about this on Sovereign Tech this upcoming Saturday. Of all ironies, a guy in a taxi video cameras a fucking Tesla, on autopilot. I think it went right through a red light. Oh boy, who's going to get the fine for that? The driver? Fuck no. Not that I want people going to court or anything. I'm an anarchist, but I think Tesla should be footing the bill for this ticket. Maybe there should be some kind of class action. So yeah, I get it. This is a requirement, for that sort of thing to work. So fine, okay. Let's say I could even see, this would be great. That all right, we need this, and if you like self-driving cars in cities, yeah, I understand. I get why people like it. A lot of people don't like to have even having a driver's license, and they don't want to drive at all. They just want to get taken somewhere. Yeah, I get all that. There's a lot of beautiful convenience to all this. I think it's wonderful. Okay, like if you want it, you can have it. Here's the one problem, is that your desire for that completely infringes upon my ability to drive my 73 Ford LTD. I don't have it anymore, but if I did, okay, you infringe upon my ability to drive that. I think that fucking sucks. No, I don't. I'm not going to say that what you're doing is necessarily unethical. Say it was in a libertarian paradise, it was a world without governments. I'm not going to say that sucks. But fuck you. I'm not going to your city. You want the Golden Stallion to show up? Suck it. Consumers can complain. This is the thing, I don't, how to put this? This is a problem, not a problem. This is a thing that comes up with Sovereign Tech, is that, we talk about ethics so much, is that, there's things that are unethical, and in some ways this certainly is, okay? But then at the same time, there are things where, look, it's just fucking anti-consumer. And that sucks. And it's okay to it's okay to fucking complain about it. And say, no, I don't like the fact that you just obsoleted my, you just obsoleted my T-Bird from 61. Or that, my 68 Eldorado, suddenly I can't use it anymore. Or I have to put some bullshit on it that I don't want to put on it. I want to keep that thing original and mint, baby. But I want to drive it down the street. I want to, I want to go to the movies. I want to go to Radio City. I want to take a good looking gal to Radio City in my Eldorado. Is that okay with you? Oh, it's not? This is and for example, okay, like a past example, take airbags, for instance. All right, now, if you remember that in the 90s, okay, when cars really started to change in the 80s. That's when they started, or late 70s, maybe, when they started getting computers in them or something, which originally computers in cars were really just controlling, ignition. They were like, kind of controlling spark plugs in many ways, the way that it fired. And then, down the line, they end up doing a whole lot more, blah, 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 blah. But in the 90s is when things really started changing. You started getting a lot of the curves, and, and that's when cars started to all end up looking the same. But in the late 90s, now, there was legislation passed in the early 90s that said by 1998, and you might remember this used to be a selling point for a lot of cars, in various commercials for Dodge or whoever, where they would say that, yep, there's airbags everywhere. That way we're compliant with, the upcoming law in 1998, the upcoming, regulation that cars have to have airbags in 98. It was a way to convince you to try and go buy, it was a way it was trying to convince you to go buy their car, okay, because you're going to be up to snuff with regulations. Now, there was just no way that everybody in the world was going to end up having, airbags by 1998. So that legislation, had a bit of a rocky road. I mean, now, yes, cars, do more or less forcibly get made to have airbags. But it's not like an overall requirement where every car on the road has to have airbags. Bottom line being is that, okay, yeah, you want a new safety feature? Great. However, a safety feature like airbags doesn't require every car on the road to change. As to where these do. I don't agree with regulation anyway, any way you cut it, but I'm just saying that like there are new features that you can add. There are new safety features, that are very interesting, to put on, but they don't require you to change every goddamn car. And that's where I run into a real issue. I mean, just as a consumer first, and then, living within a status matrix, living under governments, then I have a whole bunch of ethical issues to bring up. So yeah, this could become, a mandate, and I think it's utter crap. So anyway, there's my thoughts on that. Kind of letting that out there. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I don't, and longtime listeners of Sovereign Tech know how I feel about this. Like, I've had so many people tell me differently, that, oh no, it helps out with emissions, it helps out with this. There are plenty. In fact, I brought this up. This was, probably a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. I had a conversation with a personal hero of mine, Steve Gibson, okay, that Steve Gibson of GRC. Steve Gibson, the guy that made, that made SpinRite, the guy that hosts the Security Now podcast, one of the biggest podcasts on the planet. I had a conversation with him on Twitter, okay? I mean, direct message, not just in a series of tweets. And we talked about computers in cars, and he said, yes, computers in cars allow engineers to be lazy. And it's true. There are tricks that you can do to get similar gas mileage, to get perhaps even similar emissions and all this. There are there are simple engineering tricks, not computer tricks, hard engineering tricks that you could do that would give you similar performance to cars of today. Okay. I could go on and on about this, but my point being is that you don't need computers in cars. So don't fucking put them there. No, thank you. People give me shit about it. Whatever. You can give me the shit, but this is how it ends up. Suddenly you're doing V2V and every car's got to have it. And you don't get to drive the real cars. And there's something to that too. It's funny. I used to drive around some classic cars. I mentioned my 73 Ford LTD. I had a 74 Ford F100, big truck and everything. And when you're driving around in that, I think it's a little bit more, you turn heads when you drive cars like that. And I don't think that it's just because they look so different from the cars today, because all the cars today look the same. And so when you drive anything from any other era, it sticks out like a sore thumb. There's some truth to that. But I think that there is a certain the fact that humans are very much consumers means that their eyes look for certain things. And I think one of the things or not just the eyes, but all the senses look for certain things, say a certain toughness, texture, all these different things, right? And in the eyes and, the ears, all of it's looking for something. All of it's like testing everything at all times, right? That's the beauty of sensory perception, under the human condition. Because, we don't have to act on instinct either. But I do think that there is some instinctual thing where, all of those senses are in many ways looking for authenticity, which only makes sense because for humans to survive, you have to have a grounding in reality, right? Unless you're pointing guns at people, okay, like governments, right? But you have to have a grounding in reality. And I think that really, when it's not that old cars stick out like a sore thumb, I think because even children who really shouldn't necessarily know any better are instantly staring at older cars. And they do that because I think they know that, look, that something inside, and I'm not saying humans are all about consumerism or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's something inside that says that is something real. Like people worked hard to put that together. Like there's almost this like kind of sense And I don't mean anything woo-woo. I'm just saying, using the five perception, using the sensory perceptions that you have, you just kind of notice that, damn it, that's craftsmanship. Damn it, that's creative. There's something special there. And they know it. There's something quality. There's something that's built to last. And I think that's the thing too, is that because you can see that with all kinds of things, okay, where people just kind of like know, they have that feel like, wow, this is built to last when you touch it. Okay, it's something that really tech companies spend millions, if not billions of dollars trying to replicate in their bullshit devices. Okay, how many people talk about, I do it too, where, with their smartphones, they talk about the heft, they talk about the feeling of metal, they talk about all these things. Why did Apple get away from plastic? Because they knew that there's just this feeling that humans are kind of naturally drawn to, of something that feels like it's built to last, even though it may not really be built to last. And certainly Apple doesn't want your iPhone to last you very long, but it's there. There's a reason why, like watches, even people that aren't big fans of say the watch industry or something, when they touch, an old tag, Tag Heuer, or when they touch, hell, if they get the chance, if they touch a Rolex or even like a Citizen, it's a Japanese company, whatever. But they make good shit. Okay. When they touch those things, or Seiko, whatever, some of the really high end stuff, they know, like, you just know, you're like, that feels right. And you don't even have to tell them the brand. You don't. It's hard not to know, but you don't have to tell them the brand. How I got on this subject, I'm not exactly sure. But I'm just talking about my love for old cars. There's a magic to them. There's something special. And it used to be known, even when they were the cars that were being driven around all the time, that they were still considered special. You had to take care of them, and that's a fine thing to do. How great is it that you could just stop for a fucking minute and maybe work on a car? Oh man, I get at fucking peace when I do that. And I do it. I still do it to this day. I fix Stephanie's car all the time. I do the brakes. I replace the brakes. I do all kinds of shit. Yeah, we're missing something with the BS cars today. And that doesn't even have to touch on the idea of V2V technology. There's ways that this could work. Certainly V2V technology, you could have, you could anonymize effectively. You could kind of mix the identities of various cars and all this stuff to where they could talk to each other and perhaps send alerts or something. That don't have to be too intrusive or crazy. But there's a way. Really, there is a way that something like this could genuinely work. The problem, to where it was, say, respected human liberties and things like this. The problem is that it's not, because governments are fucking they'll suck all the data they can, baby. But, even then, you still have the problem of, for it to really work, pretty much everybody has to have it. And me as a person that loves cars and likes to own cars, I don't want it. All right? Say I'm from the Stone Age. That's fine. I don't give a shit. I don't want it. And I have every right to say that. And, the central feature of freedom is choice. People forget it, but that's the central feature. Anyway, where are we at? We're at 50 minutes. So I didn't get to everything that I wanted to in this particular episode. Let me see if I can find a quick, fun question. Oh, here's a good one. Okay, so a little bit of a gaming question. Good. We can end off with something, again, something fun. So the question is, okay, so it's about consoles. Pretty much it's asking what is the greatest console of all time, in my opinion. I might have done a top 8 consoles. I hate that. Sadly, I don't remember if I ever did that. But that'd be a fun thing to do. That's definitely one I would be doing far down the line. So to ask this question, and I'm going to put together, I need to put together a list of all my top 8s. I'm still getting my my beautiful little Dell i7559 here, into shape, but it's doing a great job. I'll make a list of all the top 8s I've done, and maybe I'll make a page and a link with all of them so that people can listen to them if they like. So best console ever. Well, so the question doesn't exactly get into it. So I'm not sure if you can count handheld consoles, because that would actually create a very different answer if we counted in handheld. So I'll give you both. It's really a toss-up. I mean, historically, obviously, the greatest console of all time is like the NES, which I still haven't gotten my Classic Mini, but I'm going to. The NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, is just like what it created the gaming industry. I mean, the Atari 2600, and believe me, I take nothing away from Atari. Nolan Bushnell is God in my book. I mean, he is at the top. He is right up there. He's above Bill Gates. I mean, he's the man. Okay. I don't want to take anything away from the Atari 2600. That was a fantastic console. But really, the Nintendo Entertainment System, saved the day. It reinvigorated after, the 84 crash, video game crash. It did it all, and it's amazing to some degree, it's amazing what the NES could do, because the NES is perhaps the first that allowed for, and people miss this. I mean, maybe the Odyssey, you could say, did this, but the Odyssey, the Magnavox Odyssey just had those sheets that you could put over your television screen. That was part of the game system, literally with cellophane sheets that you would put over the screen to say if you were playing tennis. Okay, so the Odyssey, the console, the Magnavox Odyssey, and you got the Odysseys from 70. I mean, this is a competitor with the 2600 and all that. The Odyssey it had sheets that you could put up. What it would do is it would show, perhaps, say it was a game of tennis. Okay, it could show the two little guys playing tennis, but then to make the tennis court, you would take a cellophane sheet and put it over your television screen. And this is back in the day when, say, 20-inch or 24-inch television screens were that was just it. That was the norm. You really didn't buy, get any bigger, until maybe the early 90s when rear projection became a thing and all that. But at the time, 70s, 80s, early 80s, that 24 inches was fucking huge. In fact, that's hard to imagine, right? I think about that. Especially because I watch old shit all the time. Stuff that I watched as a kid, and even stuff before I even existed. And I think about it, and I say to myself, boy, I enjoyed that on a 24-inch screen. And I got it, and I consumed it, and I picked apart every detail on a 24-inch screen. That's remarkable. Or 25, whatever, whatever you ended up with. Anyway, so you could say that the Magnavox, to my point, you could say that the Magnavox Odyssey was modular, in that, you could change up what a game was actually about, I guess, by putting up a different cellophane screen. You could turn tennis into Bloodsport or something, I suppose, somehow. You're lobbing heads at each other. You can make a cellophane, sheet that goes over the TV screen, maybe with, I'm going to be stereotyping here, with some tiki heads and guys wearing wearing grass skirts and everything, whatever. Some Peloponnesian or Polynesian, don't mind me. So I guess you could say that was the first, but really, let's be clear here. As far as what could actually affect the hardware, the NES was the first modular system. As far as especially as far as consoles go, and maybe in other ways. Because you had the Game Genie. I mean, entire industries built around things that Nintendo never planned for. How about the 4-port controller, or the controller, the 4-port adapter for controllers? One of the best games from Nintendo ever. One of my favorites. In fact, you can get Mule Returns now for iOS and Android. But Mule, the original Mule, that's an acronym, M.U.L.E. Phenomenal game, all about, economics. My buddies and I, when I was very, very young, I mean, we played the shit out of that on the Nintendo. But one of the beauties of it is you could play 4-player if you had this 4-port adapter. Nintendo didn't really plan for that. That wasn't part of the system. effectively. So it's really exciting. Same, I mean, and there's some other things too, that like you just never anticipated being a part of it. Even kind of the Power Glove, to where the Nintendo was with very few ports, two. It was so modular, and able to do so much, or even with the cartridge, slot, it was able to do so much. I mean, it was a transformative system. There's just no way around that. So I guess I kind of, just on the popular sense, I want to give it to Nintendo, but I have a couple other answers to this. My real answer is, and then I'll get into if you count handhelds, but if we're just talking about straight hook up to your television consoles, the Dreamcast, $99.99, September 9th, 1999, when that was released in America. That was, that is a day that really should live down in history. Everything that you do on a console, on a modern console today, and I mean fucking everything, it could do. And it did it almost 20 years ago. It was the most amazing, most ahead of its time. Talk about something that entire industries could build around. Talk about modular. It was so modular. The Dreamcast is a miracle machine. The games, some of the games for it are to this day, in my opinion, some of the most advanced, most far out, most creative games you'll find anywhere. And that's why they still get released to this day. They still get re-releases on, say, whatever PlayStation you happen to have. Why they get re-releases on, on Steam or on all kinds of systems, because these games, like, they're still so unique and advanced for what they were back in '99. Okay, that they hold up. And people think they're playing something fresh and something they've never experienced before, because unfortunately the Dreamcast didn't sell well. Despite itself, because it was such a great goddamn system. It was so good. I mean, it had the internet connectivity, it had the web browser, which, honorable mention to the Sega Saturn as well, because the Sega Saturn, that was like the first console that could actually connect to the web. I mean, computers were doing it long before using modems, I know. Okay, but Sega Saturn, had the ability to go on the internet and all that. That was really fascinating, and it had some other abilities too that were intriguing. But the Dreamcast, of course, Saturn's successor, is the one that really put it all together. And I mean, you had amazing games. You had Phantasy Star Online, that was remarkable. A bunch of different stuff. You could get updates to the system. I mean, updates to the web browser, all these different things. They had some really cool CD playing capabilities, kind of party capabilities. I mean, there was a billion things that you could do with this thing. And in the games, I mean, like Seaman, if you've never looked up Seaman, Seaman, it's not Seaman, it's Seaman. I mean, it is a weird ass game, but you look at it and you go, who thought of this? And like, you even get to hear Leonard Nimoy, which is great because Leonard Nimoy voiced the whole damn thing. Rest in peace, Granddad. I mean, just tons of great games. Even some games that still haven't been ported, at least as far as I know. Power Stone 2, maybe that's been ported. That was amazing. Some of the other ones, Skies of Arcadia, I know that's been ported. Space Channel 5, I know that's been ported. Ready to Rumble Boxing. So, I mean, a lot of the big games have been ported, but there's some real beauties on there, or especially like the quote-unquote gun games, light gun games. House of the Dead 2, House of the Dead Overkill. Oh, man. I mean, it's a loaded deck. And I'm just scratching the surface. Like, I mean, I went nuts when... was it 2001? I think it was 2001 when the Dreamcast, like when they, Sega just said, we're throwing in the towel. We can't do this. I mean, it kept going on in Japan for a while, and there's still people that make new Dreamcast games, but that's true for every console, and they're usually pretty great too. But in America, it ended in 2001, and what was awesome was, at the time, Electronics Boutique, it wasn't GameStop, GameStop hadn't bought out Electronics Boutique yet, but, Electronics Boutique, they were selling Dreamcast games for a song. I mean, it was like, $3 a game. I mean, I went in there and I'd buy out their whole shelf. I mean, this is why, I've talked about this before. Believe me, like guys at GameStop and EB, like, I mean, I have a history. When I say I was the king of the nerds, believe me, I was. All right, and like people knew me. In fact, here's a quick story for you. I've told this before, but I'll tell it to you again because I thought it was just so funny. Like look, I'll be honest. Like, am I boasting a little? Sure, maybe, but like I felt good about it. Okay, because when I moved to New Hampshire, I moved to Keene first. I lived there for a year. And I went to the Keene, I did my first, you take care of business first. You got to get the important things set up, get a bank account, all that, or, make sure your bank's in order, go to GameStop, make sure everything's in order there, all the important things. And so I go to GameStop and, I have my Power Up membership with GameStop and I needed to get it updated, to where, I was going to be getting my benefits in New Hampshire now in Keene. I don't have the Power Up stuff with that anymore. I'm, too busy for a lot of that stuff. I mean, I still game, but anyway, because I'm a gamer first, folks. But anyway, dealing with that, and so they had to call the store in New Hartford, where I lived previously when I moved to New Hampshire. That New Hartford, New York, is where I was living. So they had to call them up, and the manager, who became obviously a very good friend. I mean, this guy, because I spent so much goddamn money in his store, not just for me. I mean, I spent so much money. In fact, he even, when Duke Nukem Forever came out in 2011, he gave me the cardboard stand-up where you could put your face, with next to Duke and all that. That was beautiful. It was so good. I love him for it. But anyway, so he called him up. And the GM, the GameStop GM in New Hartford, in New York, started saying, the guy the guy in Keene, the GM there is saying, yeah, I got a Brian here, and this is his membership number, and I could hear it over the phone, because it's kind of loud, and there's the guy, his name's Jeremy. Jeremy starts telling him, saying, all right, you don't understand who you have in your store right now. He says, who you have is special. This is your best customer from now on. This is the king of the nerds. And I mean, he just told him straight. And the guy, the GM, in Keene is just like he kind of can't believe what he's hearing. And he's sort of smiling. And when he got off the phone with him, he tells me about it. I had already overheard most of it. But he's like, wow, he says, what a nice guy. He said, make sure you're all set. So anyway, that was really nice. That was very kind of him. So it's nice when I have a beautiful, I do, admittedly, my certain aspects of my reputation always precede me, and I love it. So thank you for my moment of being braggadocious. But so anyway, so I'd buy these guys out, with Dreamcast stuff, because it's like, yeah, give me all of it, and I'd buy Sega Bass Fishing 2 and all that, and that was the beautiful thing, was like, with Dreamcast, they had all those wild different kinds of controllers. I mean, you had the light guns, you had the controllers themselves, which were incredibly advanced. And I'll talk about those in a second. But you had the fishing controllers, where it was like a literal fishing rod, just without the rod, and it had the weight on it, and you could go fishing. And I would go home, and I would, I'd be in my apartment or whatever, and I would kick back on the couch, and I'd be, it'd be -10 outside, but I'd be sitting on my couch and I'd be fishing bass. Woo! It was a great time. I mean, all kinds of wild shit like that. Now, the Dreamcast controller itself, had this amazing, it had 2 slots. Now, this was originally pioneered by the N64, where there was an expansion slot on the controller itself, right? Where you could add like the Rumble Pack, say, on the N64, or you could add other things. So the Dreamcast controller had 2 slots, and you could do the same thing, where you could add a Rumble Pack, or you could add a microphone to it. Or you could add there was all different kinds of ideas that they had for it. But one of the interesting things was the VMU, which was the video memory unit. And what this was a memory card, back when memory cards were the shit. And still to this day, and I'll get to this in a second, that memory cards, some memory cards I can remember were, especially at the time, the single most precious possession of mine. Like nothing meant more. So, and with VMUs, it was a lot more true, because here's the brilliance with the memory cards. You weren't just saving games on it. It had a little screen on it, just a little quartz crystal screen like you'd see on certain electronic watches. It'd have a liquid, yeah, you know what I mean. So anyway, the display would it could show you, say in a game, it could show you it could act as a second display to show you things happening in game and like give you, say, a readout or a life meter or something like that, which is pretty cool. I mean, sometimes it was perhaps a little redundant, a little superfluous certainly, but it was cool. Like, you'd never seen anything like that before. But then you could also, with some games, like the one I mentioned before, Skies of Arcadia, you could actually take the VMU out, and there was an entire mini game that you could play where you're controlling the ship from Skies of Arcadia. And that what happened in that mini game directly affected the big game, the main game that you played on your television. It was incredible. Like, it was such a brilliant idea to turn the memory card into something that was just as interactive as the system itself. It was an ingenious idea that, frankly, I think they should still do. Fuck the smartphone. Right now, that's what they do, is they just kind of connect it with a smartphone, right? They connect it to an app and they have you interact with that. But I mean, there was so much potential for that. And that was such a brilliant idea. Eventually, like, nobody was really taking to it, and so Sega kind of went by the wayside with it. And what they ended up doing is that instead of having the screen in it and having it be a VMU, they started releasing memory cards that could hold like 4 times the amount of a VMU. As far as saved games go, because there used to be limits on these things. But whatever, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant system. Again, you had all that online play that you could do. I mean, just there was tons of shit. It's one of the best game libraries, not one of the largest, but what was there was awesome. Or not all of it was awesome, but a huge chunk was, certainly. So the Dreamcast, I have to give, like, everything you think of, every idea you think of that a console does, it already did, and it did it that long ago, and everybody fucking copied them. Loved the Dreamcast. But, I want to say that that's the best of all time, but then there's that part of me that there was a system that in some ways kind of refined, even though it didn't take advantage enough of it, that kind of refined a lot of what the Dreamcast was trying to do, and that was the GameCube. The GameCube is so sadly ignored in the Nintendo GameCube, which is such a pity, because that system was another little piece of brilliance. In fact, some of the games from Dreamcast that were considered to be Dreamcast exclusive because only Dreamcast had the technology to take advantage of them, ended up like being ported to the GameCube because the GameCube could do it. For example, Phantasy Star Online. Well, it ended up you could put a modem onto a GameCube. In fact, you could put an Ethernet card on it and go to town. That was brilliant. That was great. The memory cards on GameCubes, that was the one. In fact, this is what I was going to say. Like, my GameCube memory card that I had, of course, it was black, so it was my GameCube. Except for I had a Panasonic Q as well, but that's another story. But that memory card was just the goddamn most important thing to me at the time. Ooh. Resident Evil 0, all the Rogue Squadron games, you name it. I mean, I was all over it. And that was kind of the big seller for me on the GameCube was, okay, this is going to be the system for Resident Evil. I'm there. So, yeah, the GameCube did a lot of that. And also, while the GameCube didn't, kind of the one thing that the GameCube didn't have, yeah, it didn't have the web browser. I understand that. It couldn't play CDs. Well, the Panasonic Q could. But that's another, like I said, that's another story. That's kind of a separate case. But one of the really cool things that it did that I thought was just brilliant, it had the 4 ports. So, you could plug in 4 controllers. That's fine. That's a nice touch. But the interconnectivity with the Game Boy Advance was really interesting because that took the idea of the VMU to a whole other level. To where, no, you're going to connect this, a game, like say you're playing Link and the Four Swords, right? You're going to connect or whatever Zelda game you're playing, and there were some other games too that allowed for this. A second player. It's not just like the VMU where you can take it off and you can go do something, okay, and you couldn't play the game at the same time. With the GameCube, in some ways you had the best of both worlds, right? Because you could use it as a second screen for some things and to control some stuff, but the multiplayer capabilities was like, say, with Link, with some of the Link games, you could control another character with the GameCube, and you could do very specific things, and there could be some great co-op capabilities. So the GameCube, and they also had some brilliant, like they had for Donkey Kong, they had the bongo controller. And there were other things that they came up with. I thought the GameCube was a refined Dreamcast, and of course the GameCube ended up, obviously, like every Nintendo system, with just unquestionably some of the greatest games that'll ever get made. It's a guarantee with any Nintendo system, even the Wii U, and the great games on the Wii U, they're going to end up getting ported to the Nintendo Switch. So the point will stay the same, that some of the greatest games always get made for Nintendo by Nintendo or even third parties. So yeah, I think that was really brilliant. Certainly, I mean, you could go down the list. The Wii was certainly magical in its own way. The PlayStation 2, I wouldn't, if somebody said to me that the PlayStation 2 is the greatest console of all time, I wouldn't argue with you. That thing lasted forever. And what that could do over time, like even when the SOCOM games came out, you did a lot of online play and all that. I mean, the PlayStation 2 was really, in fact, the PlayStation 2 made DVDs a thing. Like that's for sure, So, I mean, there's lots of credit to go around. It's very tough to say what the one system is, but I got to give it to the Dreamcast. As far as just raw gameplay ability, I mean, it's unmatched in what it could do, and in many ways what it did. It's just a shame that I could get into. I don't want to get into the whole PC Master Race thing, because I could get into the fact that, like, is the problem that people were just too couldn't see it. They were just too dumb to not understand, because this is a trope that, like, PC gamers are intelligent, console gamers are dumb. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I'm a console gamer too. Okay, I'm just saying that, was it the fact that the average console gamer is a moron, and so they couldn't appreciate everything, and they couldn't handle perhaps some of the complexity of the Dreamcast? Yeah, that's a theory. It's definitely a theory. I mean, because in Japan it did fine. It's just that wasn't enough. It needed to do well in America to justify itself. So anyway, I'll give it to the Dreamcast. However, now, if we can include, and I won't spend much more time, if we can include in this list handheld, if we can include portables as far as consoles go, then I'm going to give it to the 3DS, or if you want to give it, or the new 3DS. I'm not going to be that particular, because in many ways the capabilities are the same. It's just kind of the new 3DS just has some more horsepower. The 3DS, you absolutely have the greatest game library of all time. Before it, if the 3DS didn't exist, I would have given. I mean, and let me be clear on this. Before the Nintendo 3DS existed, if you asked me this question then, and I was able to include portables, now I'm saying that the 3DS does beat the Dreamcast. Okay, but if I were, if you could give me the option, if this was asked a few years ago before the 3DS came out, I'd say the Nintendo DS was the greatest game system of all time, and that definitely had what a brilliant library of games that had, because it had backwards compatibility with the GBA, the Game Boy Advance, which had an amazing game library. So it would have been the DS previously, and yes, I would have said the DS beats, even the Dreamcast. But the 3DS does it because you have, Street Pass is an interesting thing. I mean, even if people don't necessarily use these features, I consider it important to say, what makes it great. Does it have the ability to do it? Well, yeah, okay, then it's great. So I think Street Pass is interesting. So you have you have Wi-Fi capabilities, you have all this different connectivity options, greater connectivity options than than even the Dreamcast had, or any other console has, because you can do peer-to-peer with the 3DS. That's huge. You could do it with the DS as well, which is also the main reason I would have said that that would have been the great system. In fact, this used to be a thing. Okay, where, and I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to confirm or deny that I ever messed with this sort of stuff, but there was, there was kind of the idea that using a Nintendo DS as a communications platform for, activities you didn't want people knowing you were doing was very viable, because who the fuck was looking for a Nintendo DS, to communicate with each other? Like, it was a great way to send kind of secret messages, not necessarily encrypted, but who's looking? I mean, if nobody's looking, it might as well not be encrypted, right? I mean, yeah, it might as well be encrypted. You want to encrypt everything, I know. Okay, but you get my point. Like, it was a very, very clever little tool, and I know it was used. I'll just say that. So anyway, the 3DS, I mean, you have these you have these peer-to-peer options as well. You have this incredible ability of non-glasses 3D, even though you could say it's a gimmick, but it's capable of doing it. That's incredible. The game library is awesome. You have the virtual store, or the e-store, whatever. I mean, that you can download all the greats. Some awesome, I mean, when you have a handheld that can play Smash Brothers, look, it's over. That's the greatest system ever. Just fucking deal with it. I mean, that's it. Is the Switch going to end up taking the place? Maybe. Depends on if they're going to allow for 3DS games to get played in the Switch down the line. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, just the game library alone, especially even the modern game library. We're not just talking about the fact that it can play all those classic games, even though that's a huge boon. But the fact, just the modern games that come out for 3DS are just some of the best being made. Doesn't matter if it doesn't match the graphical prowess of the PS4 or the Xbone. Okay, it just doesn't, because they're just great games. Now, with virtual reality coming into things, well, maybe that'll shake things up. We'll see. But to answer that question, yeah, I mean, if it's just we're just talking, consoles that connect to a television, I'm going to give it to the Dreamcast, which Dreamcast/GameCube. With honorable mention to the PlayStation 2 and, of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I wouldn't argue with either of those if somebody gave those opinions. But overall, if we're counting the portables, and that would change things a lot, because, I mean, the GameCube or the Game Boy, I should say, the Game Boy and even like the TurboGrafx Express were both, huge deals in their own right in their day. Even the Atari Lynx, like, it would really change the format of what that list would look like. But if you're including portables, I've got to give it to the 3DS or the new 3DS XL, whatever model you want to run with. That is as far as being the best console ever made, and it's amazing that at the same time it's a modern one. And it is, because the Switch isn't designed, as far as I can tell, the Switch is not meant to replace the 3DS. So at least not yet. So there you have it. I think that's a pretty good show, pretty good list, pretty good coverage of some topics. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much thank you to all the new patrons on Patreon. Thank you to those. I know some of you have upped your Patreon donation. That means the world to me, because that says not just that you enjoy it and you appreciate it, and that's great, but it says, wow, am I really seeing value here? I'm going to give you more. And if you don't, that's no less on you. I'm just saying that that's the message I receive, and I'm honored. Okay, I'm really honored by that. So I'm happy to entertain you, to get to your questions, and to talk about these things. It's it's an absolute honor on my part. And yeah, it's nice to know that people want to hear what I have to say. So anyway, a lot more content coming out, especially in the next couple weeks. I've got a lot of stuff I want to finish up. Actually, it'd be great if I can finish it up for 2016. And then 2017, I have some huge things planned. In January, I'm going to try and have our very first hangout, to where only patrons, only Sovereign Tech patrons on Patreon, okay, those that listen to the double secret feed, can actually be in on a hangout and can ask questions on that hangout. Or however, maybe I'll do it on Zoom. I might not even use Hangout. There's some other technologies that might do far better. I'd hate to have to use Google's shit. But the only reason I say that is because, Zoom I think works on, you can use the web client for Linux and all that. So that's something I have in mind for for January. We will get to these hangouts, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And you guys, and you can talk back. You can ask the question, and then even perhaps ask further questions or raise your own points, and maybe you'll convince me. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. So anyway, there you go. That's it. And new Sex and Science Hour this week, of course. And, hope everybody is enjoying their Saturnalia. Woo! Do what Saturnalia is meant to, do what you're meant to do on Saturnalia, baby. Get it on. Woo! I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.